Thank you everyone for joining us for the Medical Board of California Midwife Advisory Council meeting this afternoon. Pursuant to the provision of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N2920, dated March 17, 2020, this meeting is being conducted via WebEx. Public comments will be heard for each agenda item for individuals wishing to do so. In order to be ready for public comment, we ask that you please ensure that your comments can be heard clearly by connecting to the audio of this meeting through the proper method. If you're having difficulty hearing the audio of this meeting, it could be because the device you're connecting with has bandwidth limitations. If you do have difficulty hearing the audio of this meeting, using your device's audio, please click on the ellipsis button at the bottom of the WebEx application or the communicate menu at the top of the WebEx application, and then select audio connection. You'll see an option to call in and will be provided with a telephone number, access code, and attendee ID that can be used to connect to the meeting via phone. Using the information provided, it will automatically disconnect your device's audio and connect your phone to the name you joined the meeting with. By using this method, if you are having audio problems with your device, this will allow you to still participate and hear the audio of the board meeting. Please see the instructions on how to connect link on the last page of the meeting agenda for step-by-step WebEx instructions, including a screenshot. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Holzer and she can go ahead and begin the meeting.
Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Midwifery Advisory Council meeting. I'm Diane Holzer, the chair of this advisory council. Since this meeting is conducted by the WebEx, I'll ask all MAC members and speakers to announce themselves by name before speaking for clarity of the official record. All MAC members are able to unmute themselves to speak during the meeting. Please place yourself back on mute when not speaking to reduce background noise for all participants. Following such meeting, that might be Tisa. Following such online meeting etiquette will ensure the best audio quality for everybody. During each call for comments from MAC members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. Government Code Section 11126.5 allows a board to remove people who willfully interrupt a meeting, and to clear the room or virtual space if order cannot be restored by removing or muting the disruptive people. During each agenda item, the host moderating this WebEx event will activate the Q&A feature of WebEx and will ask anyone wishing to make a public comment to indicate so by replying yes. The host will then call on individuals who indicated they wish to make public comments by name. When called upon, the host will unmute the microphone of the individual and they will be able to make their public comment. After comment, the individual will be placed back on mute. Please see the agenda for WebEx instructions on how to connect from the link on the agenda and additional instructions. The board's IT staff will assist me with receiving the public comments via WebEx during this meeting. MAC members, as a reminder, during today's meeting, any items requiring a vote will be done by roll call vote. This means that once a motion is made and seconded, Ms. Moriarty will call each of the names individually to request our vote. I would now like to call the meeting to order and ask that Ms. Moriarty please call the roll.
Miss Abe? Miss Abe? I'm sorry, I can't hear anything.
It's muted. Sorry.
There we go. Miss Abe?
Good afternoon. I am present.
Thank you. Dr. Adams. She's still having some trouble. Miss Brelia?
Whoops. I am here.
Thank you. Miss Curran? Miss Holzer?
Present.
Thank you. We do not have a quorum currently. Dr. Adams is trying to log in.
So is maybe the best thing to do is just proceed with our agenda. And then when Ms. Adams makes it on, I would like to just reorder the agenda because Ms. Breglia has to leave early. And so there's 3 things that we have to vote on. Number 7, number 12, and number 14. So I would propose that we just go through our normal agenda and Ms. Adams gets on, and then could we reorder the agenda? once she gets here? Is that possible?
Yes, that's possible.
Okay. All right. So once she gets on, I would propose that we just go through them. Number 7, agenda item number 7, number 12, and number 14 in that order.
You also have to include number 3 in that.
Oh, right, because that's a vote. Okay, we'll start with that one then. Thank you. Okay, so we can't. So then the first thing on the agenda are the public comments that are not on the agenda. Are there any public comments?
Okay, so let me go ahead and activate the Q&A option. So individuals on the public side, you should see a Q&A window that is opened up on your screen. If you wish to make a public comment, please go ahead and just indicate yes, you'd like to make a public comment in that Q&A window, and I can call on you by the name you've connected with, and that way we can let you speak. And I see Dr. Adams joining now as well. Looks like. Give it a few minutes here. First up, we have Rosanna Davis. Let me unmute your mic. Rosanna, are you there?
Yes, I just needed to comment that I can't hear Ms. Halser when she speaks. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Diane, maybe if, I don't know if there's any way you can get closer to your microphone or anything like
I'll
that.
get really close. You guys will get to see the food in my teeth.
If anyone else would wish to make a public comment, please indicate so now in the Q&A window, and we can call on you. Give it just a few more seconds here. Ms. Adams, maybe while you're waiting, we can confirm your audio is working. Dr. Adams? If you're on mute, if you could unmute, let us know you can hear us.
Working.
Great, thank you. Okay, Ms. Holder, at this time I don't see any additional requests for public comment, so I'll go ahead and turn it back to you and shut down the Q&A for now.
All right, thank you, Sean. So then I guess we're going to move to agenda item number 3, approval of the minutes from the August 20th, 2020 Midwifery Advisory Council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the meeting minutes from the members?
Yes. So it said in agenda item 13 that, well, I forget what it said, but it was different than what I actually, it said that I raised the concern that allowing midwives to be hired by someone to provide postpartum care could actually lead to further. But what I said was that currently there's no time stated for the provision of postpartum care, and that specifying a limit could actually lead to further restrictions and prevent midwives from being hired for provision of postpartum care. So that's correction. Aside from that, I'm fine.
I just had a question. Maybe it's right. I'm not sure. On agenda, on the minutes, agenda item number 8, the 5th paragraph. It says, let me look here. It says as long as the, where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last sentence, it said that if the MAC chose to add the same information, then it would require a regulatory change. Is that supposed to be would require a regulatory change? I guess that's just a question for Carrie if this is correct or not.
Yes, it would require a regulatory change. It's
Okay,
correct.
great, thank you. I didn't know if that was how it was supposed to be. Are there any other additions or corrections? Any public comment?
I'll go ahead and open up the Q&A window again. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, please indicate in there. You can just say yes or type anything just to indicate you'd like to make. You don't have to type your question or anything like that. Just, indicate anything in there and we can call on you. I'll give a few minutes here to see if we get any requests. Okay, this time I'm not seeing any requests, so go ahead and take that as no public comment request.
Okay, and please have a motion to approve the minutes from the August MAC meeting as submitted, as corrected.
Motion to approve as corrected.
Seconded.
Mrs. Moriarty, can you call the vote?
Ms. Abe,
Approve.
Dr. Adams,
You're muted. You're muted.
Dr. Adams, we can't hear you.
Approve.
Thank you. Ms. Brelia
Approve.
and Ms. Holzer.
Approve.
Thank you.
the Meeting minutes are approved.
Yes.
Okay, so then we're going to jump. Ms. Adams, we decided to reorder the agenda because Claudia has to leave early. And so we're going to do the things that we have to vote on so that we can vote on them with a quorum while she's still here. That's why we're kind of jumping around. So we're going to move to agenda item number 7, the report from the task force on the licensed midwife annual report and discussion on proposed regulatory language. Ms. Abe?
Yes. I don't have a presentation or anything. If everyone can read the suggested changes, it's a continuation of the discussion we hear, and it's some simple language that just asks for midwives to include self-identified, background, and the clients can also self-identify. And that seemed appropriate because there was some back and forth about categories, and I know actually in the regular hospital data, there are categories, but, people don't fit into categories. So those are my comments about that.
So on the document that we have, really the only new thing is under item 1 with where the parentheses in the star are, right? That's going to be added. And then under 3A, there's another parentheses with star, total number of clients those are the only 2 new things. That's what we're voting on, correct?
Hey, this is Carrie.
That was a recommendation. I'm not sure if that was the way to go, but that's what I came up with.
I just want to point out that this would be a statutory change. This section is actually from the Business and Professions Code. And so if you're seeking a statutory change, that's something that the association could actually propose to a legislator to try to get this carried. So this would not be a regulatory change as it's presented here.
So I think that's just an example. That was the only language that I could find that actually outlined the LMAR. I didn't see any regulatory example, but I would suggest to use this for the regulatory submission. since that seemed to be the recommendation at our last meeting, that would be the most efficient way to move this along. I guess the question is, what is the most efficient? I'm neither recommending regulatory nor legislation, but I just came up with a suggestion of language to move it along.
Well, for a regulation, it's going to have to be a lot more specific than this. There are no current regulations on the LMAR. It's all set forth in the statute, and so this would mean adding a new regulation, and the language would have to be specific about what would be collected on the form. And that's if the board gives authority to move forward with it. But there would have to be a specific example of what you're looking to include with more detail.
I'm not sure if I understand, but I think there's a backlog of moving this forward. It seems very uncomplicated to me. I think I have no one on this committee but me, so this is what I came up with. These are my suggestions. I will say I did reach out for some assistance, and so I do other things. I feel like this is like I don't think it's very complicated to do this. So if there is a template that I could be sent, or I would ask for some suggestions. Let me open it up to the audience. What can we do, like in 2 steps, to move this forward? Because this is probably the 3rd meeting on this. And this is my suggestion. I guess my other question is, what do you think? Isn't this simple, what I came up with, or are we having more discussion about those 2 suggestions? I don't think it needs to be any other language than that, but that's just my opinion.
So
it seems to me that what we learned was that we didn't have to do a legislative change because it's consistent with what other major data sets are collecting, and so that it would be okay to add it. That's when we discussed it previously, that's what we had decided, was that it was okay to add it. And then it came up that we had to, submit specific language, and so that's the step that we're at now. And we had asked Ms. Webb to help us to draft the language on this. I'm not sure. I don't understand why we need regulatory language.
I provided Ms. Abe with the range of midwifery regulations so she could have sample language of what regulations look like. There isn't anything on point with this, and I would need the language that you wanted added to the regulation.
But you did say there wasn't any regulation on the LMAR.
Right, there's not. This would be a new regulation added to midwifery regulations.
But I thought it didn't need to be a regulation, but that we had the authority to add things to the LMAR that were consistent with other national data sets.
You have to do that by regulation.
do we have to do a regulation? I mean, it would be easy to just add these things and run it through legislation? Or is that, what's the easiest way?
You could seek to have a legislative change, and any person can propose legislation. The association could propose legislation, and that could be done within a year. So,
and how long would regulatory change take?
That would be more than a year, given the review process.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say, I feel like every meeting we're getting a different answer. So
No, this is consistent.
it doesn't seem consistent, but I will say it's a on the midwifery report. If you look at that item that's submitted, it just says like name, address. Like it really just seems so simple that I'm not understanding the complication. But if it is that we have do legislation or regulatory, then what I will say is that this board is, the MAC is under resourced in terms of a template and to move it forward and instructions. And what I received was just the link to like the law, and that it was nothing, of course, in there on the LMAR. This is the only thing that I have found with the LMAR. And if this is already existing and enforced, my question is, who can edit this? Like, how did this come into existence? Can't we just use the same process?
Well, okay, I want to make sure I understand as well. So Carrie, I believe I heard you say that anybody can, and I wasn't sure I heard you correct. Any person can propose the change to the statute to go through the legal process?
Yeah, you just contact the legislator.
So if any person can find a legislator to present this change to the regulation, the statute, is that correct?
Right. What's proposed here is a statutory change.
Okay, right. So this document as it is, well, could be presented in its entirety, but we would have to find a legislator who would carry it through the legislature.
Right.
Okay, so I guess then the question is, because it's such a, like you said, it's such a simple change, and yet it is an important change. So I guess my question is, I'm sorry, is there anyone that we have here or in the audience who has a contact of someone who is friendly to midwifery legislation by whom we could present this? That seems like that's the next step. If that can be done in a year, who knows what the legislature is going to do, but if that can be done within a year, and that's a less intensive process as changing a regulation, then I think make sure I'm using the right words. Sorry, Carrie, I continue, even though you continue to clarify, I continue to get them confused. We're looking, okay, so we're looking for a statutory change, presenting it to, and getting somebody to present it to the legislature so that we can have a statutory change. Anybody who can out here who can direct us to who might we go to?
So, Dr. Adams, there's two routes. We can either go through the legislature or we can do a regulatory change.
Yeah, but she just said the regulatory change is a much more involved process. We want to add we want to add some additional identifiers.
Well,
and what I heard Carrie say,
they're both involved. They're both an involved process. Just with the levels of review for regulation, it is currently taking longer than if a bill goes through the process of 1 year review through the legislature and getting governor's signature. But
so that's my question. Is there And would that have to come from the medical board? Or could we, you say anybody can, so we as the Midwifery Advisory Council could do that?
The MAC itself could not do that without board approval. And it's too late for the board to see this and actually sponsor a bill. The board will be working on sunset. But
Okay. So none
an
of
individual or the association could propose this. The board would end up reviewing it and supporting it or opposing it or asking for changes depending on what's included. But the process could get started by any person.
Okay. So, and they don't need board approval, and they don't need approval from our from this committee. But
right, the MAC isn't authorized to sponsor a bill because that has not.
I got you. So, but am I authorized to go to somebody with this document coming from the MAC and showing it to them and asking them, would they be willing to do that?
Not as if you were representing the MAC, because you
I could do
have
that. I got you. I
right,
got it.
as an individual for yourself.
So, and only two of us couldn't go, correct? Two of us on this committee could not go to someone, correct?
Well, you're
not
talking about potential violation of the Open Meeting Act and.
Okay, right. I just want to confirm that.
Right. It two people communicating don't violate the Open Meeting Act if there hasn't been serial communication on a topic. But this is something that you can't do it on behalf of the MAC because you haven't received board approval for it. So two people from the MAC, as if it's coming from the MAC and having received board approval, wouldn't be appropriate.
So what can we think about the idea, even though it's too late for this session? Basically, we only meet 3 times a year. So, I guess what I'm saying is, so the medical board is involved with something else. They seem to be able to get more done. So how about a plan? I don't know. I'm just brainstorming at this point, but how about we prepare something to work through the medical board so they can go ahead and submit it the next go around when they submit something?
We could do that, or we could also, once we open this up to public comment, it's possible that Quorum would be the one, right? The midwifery organization would be the one to sponsor legislation, and Quorum is in contact with many different legislators. So and of course, if we get a midwifery board, then it all changes too. So do we want to open it up to public comment, and we can see, because Rosanna can also let us know whether they can do it.
No, I think that's fine because whoever has the experience, but I do want to be clear and say that this is an example of systemic issues that are barriers. And I was just on the federal call for maternal health. They just wrote out a whole plan, and the Surgeon General was speaking on it. And they leaned right in to talk about systemic racism and how it impacts women of color. And the fact that we know midwifery care, our stats on that LMAR are so fantabulous, but that we don't know, we can't pull out how many Black families are being cared for amazingly well with, low birth weight and all of that. I'm just very, it's very emotional. So the fact that even on this board that we're sitting here with limited power but with talent, and that we can't come up with the steps to change 2 lines. It's perplexing and it's confusing, and it's just got me very emotional. So I think all these smart people here can just figure this out. And I'm calling for a strategy. I don't want to have like another 3 meetings in another year, whether we have the other board or not. And we're like, oh, we just don't know how to count Black people and brown people and, Asian people. Like, we just can't figure out who the midwives are. That doesn't seem right. And it seems too easy. So I'm just saying, come on, people, let's get a plan here. I don't know. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
Well,
I
think,
totally
I
agree
agree.
with you. I totally agree with you.
but I think the problem is that our hands are tied by the law.
Mhm.
So what we need is a rogue somebody to do something with this. I mean, we can have a strategy, but we as the MAC have to go through the medical board. So either, and if that's what we want to do, then let's get going and do it. If we don't want to do it, if there's nobody who wants to try to present this to a member of the legislature, then we need to make that plan to try to move it through the medical board.
Yes, and I agree with you, Ann. I just wanted to be clear and say this, though, that LMAR does exist, though. It's not like it's impossible, or, do you know what I'm saying? Like, that document didn't just come out of nowhere. So they're just barriers that are there sometimes. And if you don't call out the barriers, then sometimes I just think that's an important point to say, because it's not really that complicated.
I hear you, Danielle. And yeah, every time we've changed it, it's been a long process. But I just want to say I have some suggested wording to clarify the asterisk under number 3, the total number of clients self-identified race and/or ethnicity. I just want to know who to send it to.
I'm sorry, please say it again, Claudia.
I just have a change in the language to recommend.
Well, recommend it or mention it.
Okay, so wait, I have to find it. Instead of saying that, I would suggest the total number of clients by self-identified race and/or ethnicity served as primary caregiver at the onset of care, because that makes it synonymous with other things they've asked. Otherwise, it's murky. But I think that Rosanna might have a solution for us. She's been sitting there with her comment, please. Comment.
I like that suggestion. I wasn't really sure, how to word it. So thank you, Claudia. I just wanted to get the ball rolling. So I like that suggestion.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for getting it rolling.
I think at this point we should open it up to public comment.
Okay, the Q&A window is open. If anyone would like to make a public comment, Rosanna Davis has already queued herself up here, so let me open up her line. Rosanna, are you there?
Yes, Rosanna Davis here. Danielle, I just want to tell you that we hear you when you express your frustration and, I don't know, possible rage about systemic barriers for people of color, but also for people trying to access midwives. So just an acknowledgement. And COM would be happy to take up this issue. There's a variety of ways in which we could do it. But also this could be more easily addressed once we have a licensed midwife board in place, because then we will have removed some of the, I don't know, red tape that is just inherent with being regulated under another board. So I'm happy to have any questions about that, or how CALM might champion this issue.
What is the status then of a licensed midwifery board?
Michelle, it's currently on track to happen under the sunset review of the medical board this year.
That's another agenda item.
Okay, Ms. Davis, I'll go ahead and put you back on mute for right now if you don't have any additional public comment. This time I don't see anyone else indicating they'd like to make a public comment, so I'll turn it back to you, Ms. Holzer.
Thank you. I think like Carrie says, both of our options are legislation or regulation. If there's no way around either of those processes, then what we should just decide now is whether we want to try and go with legislation. If we want to do that, my vote would be to have CALM sponsor it for us. If we want to go through regulation, then we just start that process. So I guess we just need to figure out which way is the best.
That sounds great. And Rosanna, thank you so much for your comments. I would like to say, no, it's not rage or anything, because that also feeds into a bad stereotype. It's more just concern that I have. So Diane, I like that. And whichever one is the quickest and simplest. So, I mean, I like to suggest more than one plan, because you never know which one will succeed first, you know. So perhaps CALM could go ahead and be a strong advocate for that, but we also go ahead and do legislation.
You mean regulation?
Regulation, yes. No, there's two options. It's statutory. What is it?
Legislation and regulation, yeah.
Oh, legislation, L and R. Okay. L and R. So if the L route is the quickest, then that would be my suggestion. But I thought that you mentioned, I just wanted to ask a question, because you mentioned something from the medical board that they were asking for this data. So I just also think that's a good way to go to get buy-in, because I really think if they, I don't want to be like, I honestly have this vision that if they understood, they would just change it right away. It probably would just be not even a long drawn out thing. So I could be wrong, but that's just my thinking.
It's just not an option because we have to work within legislation or regulation on this topic. No one's trying to be difficult. There's just a process that we're obligated to follow.
Yep, the medical board can't fix it because they want to. They have to go through legislation because this was legislated. So.
Well, the question that I have regarding legislative versus regulatory, statutory versus regulatory is, which of those processes would a licensed midwife board be able to take over better or more easily? In other words, if there's going to be a licensed midwifery board, we want them to be able to have some control over this issue. Is that correct?
Well, there's so many unknowns, right? Because what's going to happen, right? If we have a midwifery board, does the MAC go away? Probably, right? Because I'm not sure would be much use for us, right? Since we would be under Department of Consumer Affairs rather than the medical board, right? So,
right.
it seems like if you look at it like that, perhaps legislation would be the easier way to transition. I would assume. Ms. Webb, do you have an opinion?
I don't think that that will matter. Whichever, if the midwives get their own board, the regulations and legislation applicable to midwives will transition.
Well, I agree with you, Diane. I think a statutory change sounds like it would be better.
Well,
Is that what I
that's good,
understood?
because the language that we've had submitted is statutory language, right? So we could use this language and get with Calm and see if they'd be willing. Rosanna said that they would be willing to start that process. So Claudia had some edits to the actual language. Do we want to talk about those?
I read it to you guys, and Danielle liked that suggestion.
Could you read it again? If we're going to vote on it, I'd like to be
Sure.
super.
Okay. So proposal, it says the following, let's see. The total number of clients, self-identified race and or ethnicity. I suggested that that read the total number of clients by self-identified race or ethnicity served as primary caregiver at the onset of care. That's the language similar to other language asking about the client.
When I guess actually, if we're not going to be sponsoring this legislation, maybe we don't even really need to vote on it. Maybe it just moves on to its next incarnation. Is that?
Well, I think sorry, Diane.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's just process. I'm wondering if we need to even vote on it.
Well, I like that suggestion because it does combine a total number of clients by self-identified race served. And can we take it one step further? The midwife's name. I mean, it would be nice to combine that as well with the first one, the midwife's name, self-identified race, and license number.
That would need to be separate.
Want to say that if you're not pursuing a proposed regulatory language, then you don't have to take the discussion any further, because this isn't being sponsored by the MAC because you don't have board approval to do it. So, Calm is represented here, and that's an option for them.
So I'd like to make a motion that we turn the proposed regulatory language over to Calm to pursue, and as the Midwifery Advisory Council pursue regulatory change, so that we are attacking the issue from both sides, or so the issue is being attacked from both sides.
Well, there's no regulatory language proposed. A regulation would have to be
right. So
more specific here.
Right. So we work on so we continue to work on regulatory language, but we turn the legislative language over to Calm to pursue that route.
I just have a clarifying question. So also, great suggestion, Claudia. I feel like let's do all of the routes. Then maybe we will get there. But The regulatory language that's through the MAC, and then we suggesting something for the medical board to send on. Is that correct? I'm sorry if I'm having difficulties.
No, so because we can't send anything to the medical board this year because we're too late,
No, I get that too.
right? So we would turn the legislative language that is what we have here that you sent, right? That you submitted. That gets turned over to COM so they can pursue the legislative angle. Then
Right.
we write regulatory language and pursue that as the Midwifery Advisory Council proposing regulatory language, which is a different process.
Okay.
Regulatory language is what kind of explains what the law means or how it procedurizes the legal language.
Okay. But can we just go for the next time with the medical board? So it's done for this year, but next year.
It's not done for this year. The medical board is on to other things, but COM can get it in this year.
I think that what we should vote on would be dropping this statutory, because we can't hand it over to them as a MAC, if I understand Carrie correctly. It's a public document, or it's been, so Rosanna would have to pick it up, but we have to drop it. Can't
But
turn it over.
we're not doing anything with it right now. It's just,
I guess I'm speaking to the motion that was made, which I probably shouldn't do yet. I'm speaking to the motion of dropping this and turning to something else, or handing it over. The words were handing it over to COM. And I think we can't do that.
We can, there's been sort of two suggestions on the table. One is to do both, to hand it over to COM, but then also to pursue regulatory language ourselves. In order to do that, we'd have to come back to the next MAC meeting with regulatory language instead of statutory language, because what we have right now is statutory language. We can give that to COM and they can pursue legislation. And if we want to also simultaneously pursue regulatory language, then what has to happen is next meeting we have to come with an example of regulatory language that would then go to the board for approval.
but the LMAR has never had regulatory language. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the LMAR is statutory. It's not regulatory.
Currently, it is statutory, but regulations are permissible.
Okay, thank you. You're muted, Diane.
Did we go through a regulatory process to do the edits that we just recently did?
No, because they fit in within those categories. So it wasn't something new. It was refining what was already in there.
Well, COM is a champion, so they always are supportive of some efforts. So I mean, I feel like that's an option no matter what. But I think we should still. I think this should not be dismissed. It impacts the those licensees that this board serves, and the families that they serve, and I think it should stay as something that we move forward. And also, it also shows the obstacles. So that's always important to just show the full picture.
So, Carrie, can we just decide to do that, and Ms. Abe will come with regulatory language to our next meeting and go forward? Do we have to have a whole vote on it to make that decision?
You can say that this is going to be held over for the next meeting because there's no action to take on proposed legislation. You don't have the authority to do it. So you can just continue this to the next meeting.
Does anyone have a concern with just continuing it to the next meeting, and then we'll just continue with the regulatory language avenue?
Yes, and I don't have a concern with it. I'd be willing to work with Ms. Abe on that, so that she's not doing it by herself and I'm not doing it by myself.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, I'm gonna, just say that is out of my wheelhouse doing the regulatory language. I have no idea where to begin or anything with that. It seems complex. So if there is, I would just need an exact template. But yes, it is great to have the help on this committee. So thank you. So I don't want to take up more time. I was done with all my comments. It sounds like we had a great conversation about this, and it's not easy to add things till the Elmar. Although too bad we don't have the people who did it in the beginning, because it seemed like they got it done. But what I understand is that was a long committee and a long process, and so that's just how it is. So I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so we're just for the minutes clarification, we are going to hold this over to the next meeting and pursue the regulatory language at our next meeting. So we can move on to item number 12, the discussion and possible action on draft letter to the birth certificate clerks and social security offices. In your packet, sorry.
To leave it. So and they're all singing. Yeah, you don't know.
I'm
confused, sorry, y'all.
I don't know if it's my computer or what, but you totally cut out, Claudia. I didn't hear anything you said just now.
We can't just.
Ms. Begbie, this is Sean from Medical Board. Your connection's breaking up pretty bad. We can't make it out. You'll be saying it's after 2 and she has to go.
Maybe if she tries turning off her video, we could hear.
I think she wanted to know, did you have something to vote on? Because she has to exit.
Well, yeah, number 12, we have to vote on the birth certificate letter and we have to vote on the dates.
So she's saying, go ahead, and she wants you to move those up, Diane. So she's ready to vote now because she has to end her call.
Well, that's the next item, number 12, to set, oh, you mean move the dates up as opposed to the letter?
I think she's willing to vote on things with no discussion.
I think the dates need to be decided.
Okay, let's go to item number 14.
So what we're going to do is vote on dates. Oops, sorry.
So we have several dates on the, suggested. I'll just to make this go quick. I would like to propose March 11th for the March meeting. Do we have a second?
A second.
Any
Do you want to
comments?
you want to suggest them all so we could do it all in one swoop?
Sure, I'm fine with that. So I would like to suggest March 11th, August 12th, and December 9th for the upcoming meetings.
I second.
Any comments?
Yeah, I like that. It's the second Thursday rather than the first.
Yeah.
I like it.
Are there any public comments on this agenda item?
So one comment came in from a public member asking if they can shift around the agenda items so Claudia can return to vote after class. I don't know if that's an option, but that's a message someone had typed in.
Yeah, but right now we're commenting on the dates, on the next meeting dates.
At this time, I don't see any requests for public comment about that. If anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the Q&A box.
Claudia's still here. I say we vote on it.
Yeah, I don't see any requests in the Q&A. So
Okay, so Mrs. Moriarty, can you please perform the roll call?
Yes, Ms. Abe,
Yes, approve.
Dr. Adams,
Yes, I approve.
Ms. Bralia,
I approve.
Ms. Holzer.
I approve.
Thank you.
All right, so everybody remember to put the dates in your calendars. So,
I have a procedural question. Can I say that I am in favor of the letter and that my vote will be yes, and have that carry through once I leave?
No, that's not an option that is available to us.
Okay, well, I don't know then.
what time can you possibly be back?
I can be back at 3:30.
The meeting will be over by then, so it's something that can be continued to the next meeting if it can't be handled this time.
Well, what time do you think is the latest?
I don't know, hard to know. We could try and do it really quick right now.
Can you get to it and I'll give them a break and jump back on?
Yeah,
Or
wait,
no?
you cut out. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, can I have you text me and give them a break and come back on? Although, hold on. How do you guys feel about another 10 minutes and come back to class? And are you guys okay with that? I feel bad. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm gonna stop Zoom again because it's screwing that up, and I'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay.
Why don't you make one of us host? That way we can.
Oh, okay. Okay, that sounds good. Yes, I will do that.
Yeah, also maybe turning your mic off would help so that we don't hear all this stuff.
Yeah, I will mute myself. Hold on.
Wait, you can do that if you're.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how to make somebody else the host.
You go into participants or
Yep.
or not participants, into more, and you go to meeting.
Diane, this is very strange. So
Yeah.
we need to get the meeting back under control.
Okay, sounds like we have Claudia coming.
Yeah.
So if we could all pull up our the letters, that agenda item number. What is it? Number 12. I'm just looking for. I know I have it printed. I'll just have to get the one in the computer. So, this Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. So this is the letter that we have come up with. Obviously, a name needs to be put in there for who to contact. But maybe we should just kind of go through it and see if anybody has any discussion or additions to the letter. Remember, this is going to be going out to the Office for Social Security and the birth certificate registration. And this was in response to families having a hard time being able, having the proof that their midwives give them being accepted as proof to get a birth registration and social security number. So at one of our meetings, we talked about creating a letter that would come from the medical board, just explaining once again that in fact licensed midwives, that the proof that they give and that they don't need a physician and they don't need a pediatrician in order to file a birth certificate or get a social security number. So that this will go to the offices from the medical board.
Diane, is there an editable version of this? Anyway, I have a few suggestions. It's a great letter though. One is I think you should just say don't use LM. Just always just say midwives or just keep saying licensed midwives.
That's fine with me. That was edited by someone else. I did have that in the beginning letter.
I also think that the second paragraph can be completely deleted because the information is repeated in the third paragraph, and we want to be succinct of what we're looking for. Come to our attention, this is the problem. Please be advised that licensed midwives are licensed and regulated by the board. Here's the information you need. And the third paragraph is what the solution is. Problem, the information needed, and the solution. So I think that second paragraph is redundant.
Yes, that's a great suggestion.
Okay, so just delete paragraph 2.
And start paragraph, and then the new paragraph 2 will be, please be advised, or we want you to be aware, or whatever. Please be advised, this is the kind of language I use, that licensed midwives are licensed and yada yada.
Diane, do we need to agree on the content for this letter today?
Well, if we want it to go out soon, we do.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's see. Can we? Oh, we can't do a thing. I'm like, we get a Google Doc, take it line by line. Anyway, so far, Anne-Marie, those are really, I'm sorry. Her suggestions are really good though. I like them, Miss Adams. And although, thank you. I like this letter is intended, so that's why I'm like wishing I could type on this, because I do agree that other paragraph is redundant. Anyway, just to get it quick, to streamline it, I agree with what she just said. If you remove the second paragraph and keep everything else and just change it to, you could just say midwives, or just say the whole, if you want to put licensed midwives, but just don't do the LM.
Okay.
Then I would approve of it.
I like the suggestion. You keep repeating licensed midwife, licensed midwife, licensed midwife until they get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep.
So that there's no mistake over certified.
Those are totally fine. I totally agree with those additions. Yep. Any other edits?
Who's going to be the contact?
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to ask staff about that.
Does this Mac have an email address or no?
No.
If the board approves this letter, then we can plug a staff person in there.
Great.
Okay, so if there's no other comments from the MAC, we can open it up to public comment.
Okay, I've left the Q&A window open. If anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate so. Okay, first up we have Rosanna Davis. Rosanna, are you there?
Yes, hello, Rosanna Davis. I'd like to give a little context, and that is that in the second paragraph, the second sentence just gives some specificity to the birth registration and Social Security clerks that that they're looking for, which is the verification of live birth, the subsequent wellness of the infant, i.e. the infant is still alive and didn't die and someone's not trying to get a false Social Security number, and the identity of the parents. So I don't know if that specificity is necessary. I didn't see where it was repeated to that specificity anywhere else. And
Well,
I don't know if you want to delete the whole paragraph. That's my comment.
I see what you're saying. The letter to inform you that licensed midwives are duly licensed maternity newborn healthcare providers by the Medical Board of California as such. And then just go down to the middle of the next paragraph. So I can see that too. Did everybody follow me?
No, you mean adding that sentence into what is now the third paragraph?
So clarifying the first sentence of that next paragraph. What's redundant is that they're licensed or by the board or licensed. I think it's important that you know that they're licensed by the medical board.
Mm-hmm.
Duly licensed maternity and newborn healthcare providers by the Medical Board of California, period. As such, they provide, they're required to provide verification of live birth, subsequent wellness, etc. to whom?
To the registrars and the Social Security offices.
Right, but I think what Roseanne is saying is that stuff that you're saying is redundant. As such, they are required to provide verification of live birth, subsequent wellness of the infant, and identity of the parents for babies born out of the hospital with LM. Stating that with that specificity is what makes this letter what will change things. Because they need to know that that's what our license says that we have to do.
Okay, and I think that's good, but those two paragraphs need to be combined with all the information or with the pertinent information that the Social Security office needs to help them understand that no physician signature is needed. So those two paragraphs can be combined.
All right.
But
how about licensed midwives are duly licensed maternity and newborn healthcare providers in the state of California. Just start there. Just kind of get rid of that first sentence. This letter is to notify blah blah blah, and just start.
I was thinking that, Diane, it'll read better. Take out this letter is to inform you that. So just begin it with licensed midwives. But that's kind of weird. Licensed midwives are duly licensed. That sounds awkward.
Oh.
How about licensed midwives are licensed and regulated by the board, by the Medical Board of California?
Right. So combining the beginning of the second paragraph.
Yeah. And then as such, they're required to provide verification of live birth, blah, blah, blah. LMs provide care.
Is somebody typing this up or writing it? Can we get a screen share or no?
I'm writing right now.
Okay,
but
you
I
can't
don't have
screen
a-
share it.
I don't know if Sean can. Sean, do you have a way of doing that?
I can make any of you the presenter, and if you'd like to, you can go ahead and present your screen.
No, but I mean, is there a way to edit a document in WebEx?
Yeah, we can just pull it up on, okay, I could do it if nobody else is willing, but we just pull it up as a Google Doc and then share it.
Okay.
Let
You
me,
would have to do that because I'm
okay, let me start working on it. Hold on.
I'm a Luddite.
Okay, guys, my class is back. I can't keep putting them off.
Okay, we're just gonna get this one sentence and then we'll vote.
Okay.
And I think what it should, I mean, what we just talked about was deleting this letter is to notify the California Offices of Birth Registration and Social Security Administration that we're gonna delete that.
Okay, oh, sorry.
Instead, the letter is going to say, licensed midwives are licensed by the Medical Board of California, and as such, they are required to provide verification of live birth, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yep.
Well, I think they need to put like they're the maternity and newborn health care providers. You need that
Yeah.
information. That's the whole crux of the issue, that they're licensed to provide maternity and newborn.
So then licensed midwives are licensed by the medical board as maternity and newborn health care providers in the state of California as such.
Mm-hmm.
Licensed by the medical board as maternity and newborn care. Okay. So it would read then, that second paragraph would start out, licensed midwives are licensed by the medical board as maternity and newborn care and newborn health care providers in the state of California. As such, they are required to provide verification of live birth, subsequent wellness of the infant, and identity of parents for babies born out of the hospital with licensed midwives.
And then go to their scope of practice is
Okay, so delete then the next sentence and say their scope of practice is from conception, da da da. So delete
Wait.
that.
Aren't you keep as such and then LMs provide care, right?
Yes.
So we're just taking out that LMs are licensed and regulated by the board out of the second one.
I don't think
Or third one.
I think we've already said they provide care to mother and the baby.
No, we haven't.
They don't care about the childbearing cycle. They care about birth. So the scope of practice is from conception until the baby's 2 months old.
Okay.
Yeah, so just delete that whole first sentence in the second paragraph. And then combine these two paragraphs.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to read the whole thing then?
Yes.
Okay. Not going to read the first paragraph. So now there will be one. Next paragraph will read, licensed midwives are licensed by the medical board as maternity and newborn healthcare providers in the state of California. As such, they are required to provide verification of live birth, subsequent wellness of the infant, and identity of parents of babies born out of the hospital with licensed midwives. Their scope of practice is from conception until the baby is 2 months old. Licensed midwives are not supervised by physicians. Additionally, childbearing women, new mothers, and newborns are not required to have physician and/or hospital care during pregnancy, childbirth, and the newborn period.
And leave the last the same. That's good.
Hi, it's Carrie, and I do have concern about the first sentence in that second paragraph where you're saying duly licensed maternity and newborn healthcare providers. You're duly licensed as licensed midwives, and then the scope is set forth in law. And so the board may take issue with that description. And so I'm trying to avoid an issue down the line.
Okay, so what are you suggesting? Can you clarify, Carrie?
Yeah, I think you can probably combine the second and third paragraphs, and you may need to delegate authority to Ms. Holzer to work with staff with this as a framework to get it in a form ready for the medical board to review, taking everyone's comments into consideration.
That's a great idea. I move that we allow Ms. Holzer to get this in a final form with staff and taking in our suggestions and their suggestions to get it ready to be accepted by the board.
Second.
And then, Carrie, then we wouldn't have to bring it back to the MAC. We could just send it to the board next meeting.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion for executive to consider.
Okay. Does anybody have a concern about removing the maternity and health care and newborn healthcare providers? I can see how the medical board could bring it up for sure.
Diane, we're trying to give you authority. It doesn't matter. I think Carrie's
Okay.
suggestion is good. So you're going to get the final form.
Okay. All right.
Agreed.
Okay, so we have a first, we have a second. I guess we have to ask for public comments.
If anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the Q&A window. I kind of lost track if the earlier request for public comment was on this agenda item or not. We heard Rosanna Davis earlier.
Right, and she made a suggestion that made us change the wording, and now we're re-voting on the new wording.
Okay, she just replied and said no comment. So at this time, I don't see anyone else requesting public comment.
Okay, then Ms. Morita, can you call the vote, the roll?
Yes, Ms. Abe.
Yes, approve.
Dr. Adams.
I approve.
Ms. Brelia.
I approve.
Ms. Holzer.
Approve.
Thank you.
Okay, bye y'all. Sorry.
Bye.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. All right, so now we will move on. We'll just go back to our regular agenda, which in the next agenda item is the report from the Midwifery Advisory Council Chair. I really had the first that I wanted to do as a report from the advisory chair was to welcome our new member, Tisa Corinne, and hopefully we'll get to meet her in person at our next meeting. I was very excited to have another midwife as a representative from Southern California to join us, but she was on vacation, couldn't be with us today. So we'll look forward to meeting her next meeting. In November, I attended and represented the MAC at the quarterly medical board meeting. There were three things, as you remember, that we had to present. One was the approval of Tisa Corinne as the midwife member, which they approved. The second thing was to approve the changes that the MAC made to the guidelines, the midwifery guidelines. Remember, we removed most of the lists. They did not approve our changes and tasked us instead with having another interested parties meeting that involves ACOG and CMA. A little frustrating when I asked why ACOG and CMA should have a say regarding midwifery guidelines. The answer was that this was a patient safety issue. So I don't know what we need to do to make our LMR statistics more public to the medical board, but it doesn't seem like they're getting it, that in fact we have a very good safety record. So that will be the next step, is we'll have another interested party at the meeting, and perhaps we'll get a little bit farther along the road than we did, hopefully a more positive and productive outcome than the last time we had the meeting. The third thing to approve was our agenda, which was our agenda for this meeting, which was approved with the exception of the discussion of removing the guidelines from the website. So remember, we also wanted, since the recommendation at first was to remove the guidelines from the website, and then we couldn't do that because it wasn't agendized. So we tried to agendize it. We edited the guidelines and then tried to agendize removing them from the website, but the medical board doesn't allow us to have that discussion. So once again, we're being silenced by the medical model of care. An item that I added at the last minute was to be able to discuss the developments regarding the sunset review with the medical board. That includes language for the formation of a midwifery board for the regulation of midwives. Super exciting. We've got that up, so we do have that on our agenda today. So, I mean, all of our, as we already found out in some of our discussions that we've already had, is that this is going to be the backdrop, right, of every conversation we have, because if the projects that we, all the projects we take on and the strategies that we develop all have to be consideration in light of the possible licensed midwifery board that could be created in our future, because it will all change things. And I must say that for the first time in a long time, I'm very hopeful about the future for midwifery in California. The prospect of a midwifery board makes me hopeful that someday our profession will be justly, will be justly held to the highest midwifery standards, rather than continually oppressed by the medical model that has dominated us for the last many, many years. So I'm very excited about that, and really want to give thanks and praise to Calm and the organizations that have helped to, mostly Calm, to get that through into the sunset. And of course, it'll have to be approved by the legislature, and there's still a long process, but it makes me hopeful that things will progress, and it'll be, one day it will be easier. So that's really all I have to say. Are there any comments? Are there any comments from the public?
Rosanna Davis is up first. Rosanna? Rosanna, are you there?
Yes, hello, Rosanna Davis. I just wanted to comment about the what Diane brought up about the interested parties meeting about the guidelines, since it's not on the agenda. And our request would be that any interested parties meeting gets postponed until we can know if we're on track to have a language for a licensed midwife board under the upcoming sunset review bill, because that would, if we can get on track with that, that will address just about every item on the agenda, including the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. This time I don't see anyone else requesting.
Okay, then we can move on to agenda item number 5, which is establishing goals for the Midwifery Advisory Council. And I would like to do the same thing as we did last meeting, is not establish any more goals than we already have on our plate until we get some more membership to help us work on things on the MAC at this point.
Sounds good, Diane. Ms. Holger.
Are there any other comments? Other comments?
Anyone would like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please indicate so in the Q&A box. Give it a few more seconds here. No, Ms. Holzer, I don't see any comments.
All right, then we can move on to agenda item number 7, report from the task force on the licensed, we did that one, sorry. Agenda item 6, report from the task force and discussion regarding Medi-Cal issues. This has my name on it, but it should have Claudia's name on it, as Claudia and Tisa were, we appointed them to be on this task force. I haven't heard from either Tisa or Claudia as far as an update on this report. So I think we should just table it for now and put it on our agenda for next time. Are there any comments? Any public comments?
Rosanna Davis is up first. If anyone else would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the window. Rosanna, are you there?
Yes, at risk of sounding like a broken record, various Medi-Cal issues will also, especially CPSP, be resolved if we can put forth a licensed midwife board and have greater regulatory authority. Thanks.
Thank you for your public comment. If anyone else would like to make a public comment, please indicate so. Give you a few more seconds. I'm not seeing anything, Ms. Holzer.
All right, then we can move on to agenda item number 8, midwifery related legislation.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. My name is Aaron Bone. I'm the board's Chief of Legislation and Public Affairs. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the legislature reduced significantly the number of bills that they approved. In fact, this year in 2020, the legislature approved less than half of the number of bills than they did in 2019. There are 2 bills that were signed into law that I wish to touch on that may be of interest to the back. The first is Senate Bill 1237, which allows certified nurse midwives to attend to low-risk pregnancies and provide prenatal, intrapartum, and postpartum care without the supervision of a physician. The bill defines low-risk pregnancies as one where there is a single fetus, a cephalic presentation at the onset of labor. There is a gestational age of the fetus greater than or equal to 37 weeks and no more than 42 weeks at the time of delivery. That labor is spontaneous or induced, and that the patient has no pre-existing disease or condition that adversely affects the pregnancy, and that the certified nurse midwife is not qualified to independently address, consistent with the bill. The second was Senate Bill 1474, which includes a section that prohibits anyone regulated by a licensing board from including within a contract for consumer services a provision that prevents the patient from filing a complaint or participating in an investigation of that licensing board. The bill defines consumer services as any service obtained for use primarily for personal, family, or household purposes. A violation of this section would constitute unprofessional conduct and subject that licensee to discipline. As was mentioned earlier by previous speakers, during the medical board's meeting last month, the members approved their draft sunset report. In the report, the members expressed their support for the creation of a midwifery board, provided that there is an appropriate scope of practice and related statutory consumer protections. The board did not endorse a particular approach to creating a new board or detail out what an appropriate scope of practice might look like. However, there was some discussion about incorporating certain provisions of Senate Bill 1237 into that scope. Staff are making the final adjustments to the report before it is submitted to the legislature no later than January 4th of next year. That concludes my comments, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to turn it back and answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the members? Are there any public comments?
I was gonna just say that sounds like an exciting the way forward. So, yay.
If anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the Q&A window. Okay, I'm not seeing any requests.
All right, then we will move on to agenda item number 9, discussion of sunset review. And actually, I would just like to ask Rosanna to give us an update on it because she's the main person who's been working on it and knows more than anybody about it. So, and I asked her before the meeting if she'd be willing to talk about it, and she said she would. So she is in the public. So I don't know, Sean, can you unmute her or do whatever?
Just, okay. Rosanna, are you there?
Yes, Rosanna Davis, California Association of Licensed Midwives. I'd like to first thank medical board staff for working with us on this issue. It's very much appreciated. Aaron Bone in particular, in the Sunset Review report, and other staff members who worked on it, very accurately described our current situation and history and how we're regulated and some of the ongoing obstacles to the mandate to carefully protect the public and not make regulation onerous. So where the process is right now is that, as Aaron mentioned, Mr. Rowan mentioned, was that the final report that was, the draft was approved by the medical board in November, will go to the legislature, and then the legislative staff will draft up a bill and we'll go from there. I'd be very happy to take any questions or comments about next steps.
I have a question. So it sounds wonderful. And is there any, I guess I'm wondering about the process. Basically, what I'm getting at is, sounds like, does this report usually just move forward and things get approved, or is there some kind of public awareness that needs to happen just to support, the effort? Or that's my question.
Madam Chair, this is Aaron. I'd be happy to answer that question if you like.
Thank you.
So after the report is issued, it will be published on our website. Typically in the late February to middle March timeframe, the legislature will hold a sunset review hearing. There are a number of boards, in addition to the medical board, that are up for sunset review next year. Typically, when they have a hearing, they'll try to do 3 to maybe 5 at a time. There'll be presentations from the leadership and staff from those boards that are scheduled for each of those hearings. And that's a public hearing. And so there will be, opportunity for comments to be made from the public. And the members of the appropriate legislative committees typically have their own comments and ask questions of each board staff. And that schedule hasn't been announced yet by the legislature, but we would expect that to be made clear in the next several weeks or so. So that's typically what's referred to as an informational hearing. There's no vote that's typically taken, but it's just kind of a way for the legislature to ask questions and get clarification on matters that are either in the report or could be something that's not necessarily in the report. I think Ms. Abe, your question about is what's in the report typically just kind of approved as is? I would say that is typically not the case. There's often a lot of discussion surrounding what goes into a bill or not into a bill. As I said before, our report doesn't endorse a particular approach or language with regard to the creation of a midwifery board. So that would certainly be subject to additional, discussions if the legislature desires to entertain that idea. After that informational hearing, then legislation is introduced, and then, like there is with any other bill, there are hearings and committee hearings, and then votes by each house of the legislature. So and then it would follow the kind of normal course that you would see with any other bill. Anyway, I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you so much.
I guess one of my questions is, given that this is happening, I'm assuming, well, maybe not. Will they want to have interested parties meetings in order to define the scope of practice of midwifery before they would do it? Or is it something like where there's meetings that have to happen? Or is this just lobbying? This is just going to be lobbying from ACOG and CMA about what the scope of practice has to be. That's probably just what's going to happen, right? It's going to be, there's not going to be meetings.
This is Aaron again. I guess the short answer is it all depends on the really depends on the will of the legislature. It's their process, not only in sunset review or really the consideration and approval of any change in statute. That is, constitutionally the provision of the legislature to decide how they wish to proceed on anything. But yes, I think we should expect all of the interested groups to speak into how they feel about not only this provision or this topic rather with regard to the potential creation of a midwifery board, but really any of the other components of the board's report. We answer questions that are proposed by the legislature, and there may be other things, as I mentioned, that aren't in the report that people may wish to speak into, and the process is very open, and it allows for the once every 4-year review of each of the boards and bureaus under the Department of Consumer Affairs. But there is no prescribed, other than kind of what I mentioned earlier in terms of how generally the process goes. There's a lot of flexibility, and the legislature can decide how they wish to go at it.
Are there any other comments? Are there any comments, any public comments?
So we still have Rosanna Davis out there. She's still able if she has any, but if anyone else would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the Q&A window. I'm not seeing any requests.
All right, then. Well, this is a very hopeful thing. Thank you so much. So then I guess what we need to do is move on to agenda item number 10, the program update with Ms. Moriarty.
Yes, please turn to page 10A1 for the midwifery program licensing statistics. In the first quarter of the fiscal year 2020-2021, the board received 14 new applications, issued 5 new licenses, renewed 60 licenses. Please turn to page 10B1. In the first quarter of the fiscal year 2020-2021, the board received 68 transfer of planned out of hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for licensed midwives. Please turn to page 10C1 for enforcement statistics for licensed midwives. In the first quarter of 2020-2021, the board received 5 complaints and referred 2 for investigation. Please turn to page 10C2. The board received 2 complaints in the first quarter of 2020-2021 for unlicensed midwives. And please turn to page 10C3 for enforcement statistics for transfer of planned out of hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for licensed midwives. In the first quarter of the 2020-2021 fiscal year, the board received 68 forms and 0 were referred for investigation. And finally, please turn to page 10C4 for the first quarter of the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The board received 1 transfer of planned out of hospital delivery to hospital reporting form for unlicensed midwives and 0 were referred for investigation. Are there any questions? Okay, perfect. I'm completed.
All right, are there any other comments at all from the members? Are there any public comments?
Rosanna Davis, go ahead, please.
Yes. Thank you for this report. It's always very helpful. We've been reviewing various history and documents related to the midwifery program over the last year or so, and we were reviewing, we meaning Quorum and our legislative advocacy team and strategy, and in comparing the fee study from the medical board website presented January 2020 by an independent consulting firm, the number of complaints received is consistent with the type of reporting that we see on page 12. However, on page 13, the number of investigations opened is typically not consistent with what's reported at MAC meetings. And the information from the consulting report is very concerning, as it indicates that 100% of licensed midwife complaints are investigated. And when you compare that with physicians from the same report, it's that their complaints are converted only 7%. So I bring this up today just to call attention to another example of why we need clarity about the midwifery program related to disciplinary issues, so that licensed midwives have the same tools and information to appropriately protect the public and serve the profession. That's all. Thank you. Oh, and that of midwifery board would take us to that end. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. And if anyone else would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the Q&A window. Okay, at this time, I'm not seeing any other requests.
Thank you, Rosanna. That's an interesting information that you shared, or the data. So you're saying that based on the number of midwives and comparing it in proportion to the medical board, the reporting and investigation is higher for midwives than as compared to physicians. That was a question I had from your comment.
She's off mute. Would you like me to bring her back?
Yes, because I just wanted to clarify that.
Rosanna, are you there again?
Yes. So it depends on which reporting you look at, and I'm not asking that anyone answer to this today or at the next MAC meeting. But I think it would be easier to oversee these things and have greater clarity under a licensed midwife board. And so if you look at the fee analysis from the independent study, the information presented there is different than is typical with the licensed midwife report. So I'm not saying which one is accurate or claiming that there's any lack of transparency going on. It just to point out that there's a discrepancy in what's reported.
Thank you.
You mean, Rosanna, you mean more costs are going to midwife investigations than to physician investigations?
That's what would be indicated from the fee report, if I understand it correctly, is that there are that 100% of complaints are getting converted to investigations for licensed midwives.
Is there any comment from staff on the difference between the why that would be, why all of them would be investigated with midwives and not with physicians?
I don't mean to put anybody on the defensive here. Sorry.
Well, I don't even know if that's something that we could take up at this time, but I just wanted to speak to your comment and just clarify. So,
Hi, it's Carrie. I think that staff will have to talk further with Ms. Davis to zero in on what she's referring to so that it can be looked into and an explanation can be provided.
Thank you. Yeah. Part of, I mean, it's also, I think we also created a little bailiwick when we created the hospital transport form and started making that mandatory, because now those get processed as complaints as well, which I know was never our intention, but that's just, I guess, the way it has to happen, how it comes in. So I'm not sure if we have achieved our goal with these hospital transport forms. Are they serving a goal? Do we still need them? Should we maybe put that on the agenda for another meeting to actually just get rid of them? Because I know that, you know, it's a hassle for the hospital, the hassle for the midwives, and I don't know if that we're really even doing anything about it.
Well, it requires a statutory change, and it's on our list of to-dos with CALM for statutory changes.
Yay. Okay. Well, thank you, Mrs. Moriarty. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to move to agenda item number 11, which at this point might be moot as well. Discussion and possible action regarding legislative solution to address stalemate on creating regulations for licensed midwives. We've been tasked by the medical board to have another interested parties meeting to talk about guidelines, which I'm sure will, to talk about the regulation of the guidelines. So we've also know that we're thinking about the possibility of a licensed midwife board. So does it make any sense to put a lot of energy into interested parties meetings and a lot of discussion if in fact it's gonna be a whole different deal? We're gonna have our own board. Part of me thinks it might be worth doing because are those lobbyists out there that are going to be lobbying for our scope of practice with the legislature. So in some ways, maybe it makes sense to try and do some communicating in an interested parties meeting before that whole process happens. But yet we've already tried it once and it really didn't come, it came to a stalemate. So this discussion is kind of like a brainstorm of what is the next step. And now we have a whole new, thing to think about with the possible midwifery board out there. So those are the issues facing us with the stalemate.
So can I clarify, the request was from when you met with the medical board, Ms. Holger, that they wanted you to include obstetricians. They said you must have a conversation, like invite them to the table. And until you get there, until we have a conversation with them, we can't push forward with this.
Well, they didn't specifically call out ACOG and CMA, but that was who was at the meeting making comments. And in the past, interested parties meetings regarding our regulations have included ACOG and CMA and others as well. But basically, I think it's traditionally understood that they would be an interested party.
Okay. So a couple of things. I don't have an answer or thought since I just really started thinking about this. I think the midwifery board is great, but it might be out of alignment with what we're just doing with the MAC. But it's connected. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you start the conversation, that probably wouldn't be bad because you have the same interested parties or stakeholders, but I'm not sure if that'd be the best use of time because, I don't know. So those are just some of the things I thought about. But the other question I have is midwifery guidelines and midwifery care, just from an educational point of view, is separate from, other care providers. So if you reverse it, midwives could, I guess, be an interested party in other care providers, but, not typically. So I don't know. That's just interesting. The ask is interesting, but I guess so. The question is that a good use of time or not?
Exactly. Do we want to spend a lot of time doing that? I mean, if we want to change the guidelines from what they are now and get it approved by the medical board, we have to.
Since we're short on resources, I think your first line of thought is hold off, for now and wait and see what the result will be from getting a midwifery board, in the works.
That's fine with me. I think postponing it would be totally fine.
Kind of agree with that as well.
So I mean, just the ramifications would be that the guidelines as they are just stay on the website at without the revisions of that we wanted to make. But
Hi, this is Carrie, and I want to refocus the members to what the agenda item is. And I know there's so many things that are interrelated, but this is specifically regarding discussion and possible action regarding legislative solution to address stalemate on creating regulations. And so, right now there's not one that's been presented. We've already talked about what's in the sunset report. And so I just need to make sure that we're staying on topic.
Well, Carrie, what is your opinion about, I mean, we can postpone, I mean, the way to do that is to have an interested parties meeting, right? And talk with everybody. So no matter if it's a legislative solution or if it's just doing regulations, that seems to be the way to, if we're talking about decreasing a stalemate, that's what has to happen. So
Can I clarify? So that is a long agenda sentence. So that's just on focus from the get-go. But thank you, Carrie, for trying to keep us on task. I don't even know what that's asking, but I think, Diane, what you summarized is you went to the medical board with what we had came up with at prior meetings. They voted against that and gave you direction to come back and gave you options for it to deliver to us. And those options are to move forward, you must hold meetings to get a consensus and then come back to us again. That's where we're at? And so you're asking, is this worth moving forward or not?
well, that was, yeah, that's what that was about, creating the regulations, because we've
Well-
been in stalemate about regulation. When we were creating the regulations years ago.
Right. I think that there's some crossover in this discussion
Yeah.
where you're talking about the guidelines, which are not regulation and are not legislation. And so the interested parties meeting was to talk about the proposed changes to the guidelines. And so that's getting overlapped in this.
Okay, got you.
So
Thank
that's
you,
the point.
Carrie.
Sure.
Carrie is saying the guidelines, that is not agenda item 11.
Right.
Okay, so that's separate. Okay, thank you for clarifying. So the ask here is, so Diane, I think she's saying we're talking about something that we're not supposed to be talking about. So she just wants us to ask and resolve agenda item 11, which is, do we want to address the licensed midwives regulations, creating them? So I don't know. I say that we should just hold off on that too. That's my first thought on it.
Yeah, it's yeah. Given, maybe just put, if there's any of us individually that have extra effort, we can put our individual effort into helping Colin with whatever is necessary to create a midwifery board.
Okay, it doesn't seem like we need any vote or anything. So that's all I had, unless the audience had something. I think we could move on then.
Is there any public comment?
If anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the Q&A window. This time I'm not seeing any requests.
Sean, how many people were logged in to attend this meeting?
Do you mean besides panelists?
Yeah.
Right.
There are 13 plain attendees, but several of those I recognize as board staff and other state entity staff.
Oh, okay. I just we can't see the audience. So I think it would be helpful in a future WebEx if you let us know at some point, maybe beginning and midpoint, how many are in the audience.
If you scroll down to the bottom of your participant list, you can see attendee, and it says like 13 right there now, and you could.
Oh, thank you.
View all attendees if you're interested in, but yeah, no problem.
Okay, I'm so used to Zoom. Thank you, Sean. I do see now the 23.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
And it. Oh, right then. Let me see. Where are we? We will move on to agenda item number. We did 12. And we did 13. We'll move on to agenda item number 13. Discussion and possible action on selection of one midwifery advisory council member. Ms. Moretti.
The board has not yet advertised for the public member position on the MAC. Rather, the board will be advertising for both the vacant public member position and Ms. Brelia's licensed midwife position as her term expires June 30th of 2021. Ms. Brelia may apply for a second term. Applications for both positions will be presented at the March 2021 MAC meeting. That's the conclusion.
Are there any comments from the members? Are there any public comments?
Oh, I did have a comment, which
Oh, sorry.
that's okay. I my question really is more, how does the word get out? Because I noticed with the last cycle, even as a board member, I had no idea we were like recruiting new board members. So I just didn't know what was our resource to recruit or get the word out better, or social media, or is it go in a newsletter? It seems that the recruitment isn't that strong. I was just curious about that. And do all the, I'm guessing all the licensed midwives are given the information at least.
That is correct, and it is posted on the board website as well. And information is sent out to interested parties, and it's also mentioned at the MAC meeting like today.
Thank you. And we don't, does the medical board have any social media or anything like that? I guess what I was thinking, if it could be posted if there is a social media, if it could be posted.
This is Sean from ISB. The board does have Twitter and Facebook pages. Tanya, if you want to talk to the PIO about possibly doing something like that, I might. Or Aaron, I see Aaron here. He's going to answer.
Hi, this is Aaron. Yes, Sean's correct on our social media platforms, and yes, when there's that information goes out in the normal course, we can certainly share that as well through those channels.
Please, I think that would be just very good, especially since the board is now, it's before people had to travel to participate, but now for sure the next 6 months we probably will still be in this format. So I think that it's important to increase this, to get the word out, and more people would probably be willing to apply.
Absolutely, we will be doing that. Thank you.
If anyone has a public comment, would like to make a public comment, please indicate so in the Q&A window. I'm not seeing any requests at this time.
All right, then we can move on to the next agenda item, 15, which is future agenda items. So we'll have all the standing ones, a report from program and from legislation and the chair report. Let's also put on we moved the report from the task force on Medi-Cal. Let's put that on the list. Oh, and we have to come back to the to the regulatory language for the LMAR, the license of proposed regulatory language. And what else? Oh, I guess we'll be voting then on new members. Hopefully 2 new members. Could we say that we were going to do? Does anybody remember anything else?
Ms. Holzer, did you want to include establishing goals again?
Yes, that's a standing agenda item, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And will we get a report of what happens with the Social Security letter? It may be in your report.
Yeah, would that be included in program update?
We can add that as an agenda item so you can give an update if you'd like.
Okay, great. And maybe we want to add an update on the sunset review process, the creation of the midwifery board. I think that's it. Unless anybody else can think of anything that we forgot.
No, that all sounds good.
And if we come up with anything, we just have to get it in before the medical board. So, and that'll be a while from now. So we have some.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, so I guess if we have nothing else.
Ms. Holzer, do you take public comment on the agenda items?
Oh, yes, sorry, we do. Is there any public that comment for agenda items?
If anyone would like to make a public comment regarding the upcoming or future agenda items, please indicate so in the Q&A window. I didn't see any, but I just wanted to be sure before we proceed.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll give it a few more seconds here. Okay, I don't see anything at this time. Just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
All right. Well, then, if there's nothing else, I think we have the meeting should be adjourned.
I just want to say that thank you for the meeting. And this is our second one and the first one in this format since the COVID pandemic. And I know that everyone is experiencing their own kind of stress. I just felt the need to say that you should pat yourself on the back. You've made it this far. Be kind to yourself. For me, I'm like, we have another day. So I think that's always a good thing. And I hope that you enjoy your holiday and your new year. And I look forward to seeing you in 2021.
Thank you so much. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.